I have these questions that arise in my mind because we have this baseline of knowledge that we have the general understanding of how things work, and that general understanding is typically taught to us in the lower level schools, um, such as public school. Okay, so we get this general understanding at a young age on how everything works. And when we step out into this world, we believe to a large degree, a much larger degree than once you continue on in life. You know, as you continue on in life, you kind of like, and you are confronted with different things you step away from or start questioning what you were originally taught about the world that we live in, okay? I always have this question in my mind. The things that I see, do other people see these things, okay? And so if you have like a large population of people that are being led to believe that this is how things are, and then, you know, they just like puppets on a string, just continue on believing that things are the way they think they are, but in all reality, they're nothing like they really are. You have to start questioning things. And it kind of like slows down that puppet motion, the strings, and just makes everything just stand still for a few minutes to reflect, of course. So my question of today is, do you see what I see? Or was there some advanced knowledge in your public school that passed on something that placed you a little ahead of the rest? And if not, maybe you couldn't grasp the concepts that were being taught, or maybe it was so blanketed in the teaching of what we really need to know out there, that, you know, it's out there, but you really don't need to know all those things, type of thing. And I think about these municipal corporations a lot, and people really don't understand the presence of our government here. And we all have this false belief that the purpose of the government is to provide the safety, health, and well-being of the people at large. And the reason why, you know, I was led to believe in my early understandings of government that all these pockets of government came about because the population grew. And it was easier for the overall government to break it down into these little sections of government to help provide those things, the safety, the security, and the well-being for the people in these generalized areas. And that's why we had so many different types of governments, okay? That's not the way it is. The overall purpose to each body of government has nothing to do with safety, security, health, and well-being, okay? It really has everything to do with generating revenues. No different than a regular corporation or a small business. The purpose of their corporation, the municipality, the corporation, has nothing to do with ensuring the safety, security, health, and well-being of the people that reside in those areas. The overall purpose is to generate revenue. And the reason why their purpose is to generate revenue is because no different than a small company, medium-sized company, or a large company, is that they employ people. And so in order to employ these people, they have to be able to pay these people. And keep it all, moving. So the first thought, you have to wash away this whole thought about the United States, where it's this big enterprise where you're so well protected, because that's like such a false belief, okay? And then you have to bring it down into your own community, and you have to look at things from a smaller scope and perspective and say, okay, if the reason why there is this municipality called the town of blah, blah, blah is because in this section of land, outlined section of land, there's a group of people that the government wants to make sure, ensure the safety, security, health, and well-being of. You have to wash that away from your mind, because that is not their purpose. Their purpose is to maintain their organization under a structure that helps them prosper, because they are revenue generating organisms in the overall scope and magnitude of all businesses combined. Their purpose is not what we are led to believe that their purpose is. And so when I look at that stuff based on all my experiences and my prior belief system, which to a large degree I honestly believed that the purpose of the United States was to maintain certain levels of standards so that people's safety, security, health, and well-being are being, looked upon. And when things get out of control, that's where they step in and kind of like reshape things to make sure that the safety, security, health, and well-being are maintained in place. And that's not what it is. So just like a small business or medium-sized business, a Microsoft type size business, their first order of business is to make sure that their operational cost, including the salaries, benefits, pensions of their employees, are taken care of. And how do they do that? They raise taxes and they collect taxes. And the other portion of the things that were not clearly conveyed, in those earlier schools, is that there are things called municipal securities and bonds that are traded, and the funding of all of that stuff is used not like we think. Like we think the reason why they raise taxes, let's say property taxes, is because, there's a need in the community and they don't have enough money in the budget to take care of this need, and that's not true. Because any big projects they have, like building a new school, they derive those funds from the sale of municipal bonds. And raising of the taxes and stuff, that's to cover their additional promises out there to themselves, their employees, their vendors, and to pay for, interest payments on these municipal bonds and other securities and stuff. So, it's almost like they get a loan from a bunch of investors so that they can build something, and then they have to pay the loan back. It's kind of like that in a nutshell. And in order to pay these expenses, they have to raise taxes to cover what they have already, the obligations to themselves and their other financial obligations. No different than running a household or a small business, medium-sized business, any business. It operates the same way. My big problem is, where do you find the structure, the original structure of the presence of the government, okay? Because it's all blended in now, okay? They have their shared services and all this other stuff, so it's not separate and distinct. And because it's not separate and distinct, I raise the question, why are government organisms, they're little municipalities, they're municipal corporations. How come they don't have to file annual taxes with the Internal Revenue Service? And they should, because they really are revenue generating businesses. At a certain point where they're generating revenue that goes above and beyond the basic needs of the structure, shouldn't they have to pass that revenue back to the government so that the government uses that money to pay off, like, the national debt, to bring prices back down and provide for the security of the country? It's so out of whack, and the average person does not understand any of these structures. There's too many structures, and they all operate differently, and none of them go back to a sounding block, an original sounding block. So, for instance, if there's a case before a judge, and the parties in the case, they're one's a white party and one's a black party, they don't put a stake in the middle and say, to ensure that there is no prejudice with this case, we are and to make sure both parties fully understand that, there's going to be no decisions made based on black and white and any of the colors of these pages moving forward, and, like, hold an object or something out there saying, we fully recognize that there's a difference between you two people. It's evident in the color of your skin. But in this courtroom, there will be no prejudice. And we're going to look at the matters involving, the issues of the case itself without actually looking at the colors of the pages, okay? They don't do anything like that, which would go back to the actual Constitution. The equal rights and, the affordability, all men are treated equally. They don't do stuff like that here. It's almost like you walk in blindly. You don't know what the individual prejudicenesses are with the judge or the attorneys or the members of the courtroom or the people that are employed there. And so you can be blindsided at any point in time. And so there's no firmly held stake in the ground that says, once you walk through these doors, and it's clearly conveyed that, in hearing this case, all prejudice are set aside, and the focus is on the contents of the case involved and the arguments between the parties and any other issues that could arise from that point forward. It's not like that at all. It's the whole, it's almost like, for me anyways, led to believe things that are so untrue. And then waking up going, on any given day, waking up and saying to yourself, where the fuck are we? And what is this fucking place that we actually live in? Because the things that happen here, if we went back to the earlier understanding of all things created underneath that red, white, and blue, none of this shit would be happening. None whatsoever. And the other thing that blows my mind, it's almost like, can you see what I see? Is that people that are born and raised and have, you would assume, have more legal standing because they were already here standing and working in this country. They have less legal standing than illegal people that have entered this country, because our country will just put like a little blanketed shield over those people and protect them. And use our hard-earned money by shaving off more portions for taxes to provide for these people. And we have no say over these things. We have no say over any of these things. It's once they enact this shit into law, all of a sudden, you know, it's like, come on, puppets, get moving. And I don't know why more people don't speak up, why more people don't go to those town meetings in large numbers and say, what the fuck? Like, how much more burden can you place on one individual's back? Oh, it's not just you, we all gotta do it. But the burden of some is much greater than the burden of others. And if they fail to understand that, you know, I don't know how else it could be instilled in their minds. So my question of the day is, do you see what I see? Because we are all under, in my opinion, this false belief that there really is this big umbrella, the blanket, called the United States of America, when in all reality that blanket does not exist. For if it did exist, there would be hardcore instructions with orders that were fed down to the federal government. The federal government would rally up forces to go into each and every individual state and place demands on the state's hands and heads to act and behave a certain way. None of that shit, none of it is like that. It doesn't operate like that. I've never seen it operate like that whatsoever in my lifetime. And it's kind of scary because more and more people, if I'm almost 60 years old and I still don't understand the overall structure of the United States of America, and this is supposed to be the country that I live in, then magnify it by more people much like me that still don't understand. Is that a public school system problem because they fail to instill the true concepts that we're faced with outside those school doors when we begin to be employed? Or, you know, don't blame it on the parents. Or is it society as a whole? Whose fault is it that we don't understand? Because I don't understand. It's too much to understand. They all operate independently, all on their own. There's no formal structure, nor is there any formal reporting for these people whatsoever. And I can tell you something right now. I don't have it in front of me, but I was utterly surprised based on how things operate today in the year 2023, that in 1972, in the town in which my grandmother resided for 100 years, there were only two cases of people needing public assistance. And that is amazing. So, do you see what I see? Is the question of the day.